Hello everyone, this is Tanvi Dhulia from Better Photography magazine. Abstract is the fifth in a series of contests called the Better Photography Weekly Challenge. Winners stand to receive exciting prizes on behalf of our gifting partner, Digitech. The smartphone category winner will receive a Digitek Gimbal DSG 005 worth 10,995 rupees. It is a sturdy 3-axis handheld gimbal that comes with app-based functions and numerous features that can enhance the quality of your videos. The DSLR category winner will receive a Digitek Tripod DTR 500PH worth 4,995 rupees. It is a lightweight tripod meant for professionals and is suitable to use with DSLRs and small camcorders. Hello everyone, in this video of the Better Photography Weekly Challenge, we are joined by Harikrishna Katragadda, our mentor and judge for the abstract contest. Hari Katragadda's work explores communities, the environment, and personal memories. Using a long-term documentary approach, he works with alternative photographic methods to incorporate found materials in his images. He graduated with a master's degree in photojournalism from the University of Texas at Austin and started his career as a photojournalist with Mint in New Delhi. For his work on pollution in the Ganga River, he has received the India Habitat Center Photosphere Grant and the Invisible Photographer Asia Award, the Invisible Photographer Asia Art Award. He has worked as an independent photographer since 2010 and has been published and exhibited internationally. Hari, over to you.
Hi, everyone. So I will share the screen and basically start what I want to say. Hello, everyone. So we're going to talk about abstract photography, which is a very broad theme in the whole field of photography. In photography, we have mostly representation of what we see in the world. So we have photojournalistic images, documentary images, commercial images as in advertising, and many kinds of images which are essentially translating ideas of what we see in the world. But once we get away from the idea of representing the world as we see it, but through the ideas and emotions, if we can express them photographically, without an intention of the traditional or a realistic image, we can get into a new, very interesting realm called abstract photography. Now, this has it's a very potent field where you're not bound by most of the rules which define photojournalism, for instance, or documentary photography. So let's see what can be done in abstract photography and how to get different kinds of images in abstract photography. Broadly speaking, we can divide abstract photography with design, movement, and camera tricks like double exposure and use of lenses. So in design, we have colors, lines, shapes, forms, patterns, and texture. Essentially, you're using geometry of the scene to create something very abstract. And we'll look at examples to see how is it achieved. Then we have movement, where we have like camera panning, slow shutter speed, lens being zoomed in and out, and sync flash, using slow shutter speed. And then we have double exposure, again, intentionally, like, it's something which we don't do intentionally, but here we use double exposure to create something very abstract, something very ambiguous, and ambiguity which is not necessarily wanted in traditional photography is something which we can really exploit it in abstract photography, and it can give us some very interesting results. And finally, macro photography, which you're looking at the world from a very, very close viewpoint, which is not accessible to our eye. So again, that can create some very interesting patterns which we do not normally observe in the world, but only through macro we can see those things. So I'm going to start with a photographer called Sarika Donda. I will use mostly her Instagram images, and she shoots a lot of abstract images and pretty fantastic work. So you should definitely check out her work. I'm going to start with this image, which is basically not easy to guess. I could not guess it. It's basically a close-up of an onion. using the macro. And I think it's a very beautiful image. The colors are really muted, and it's almost monochromatic image, and all achieved through just a macro lens. This is an image of an oil droplet in a bucket. Again, the colors are really fantastic. It's a very, very striking image using a very simple, macro idea. And this is patterns formed in the sand in Nubra Valley in Ladakh. Again, it's really a brilliant image, which has a very minimalist feel to it. There's a lot of texture to it, and also there's a graphic quality to it, which are like lines, some of them flowing horizontally, some of them slightly twisted. But overall, it's a very beautiful image, which has this graphic quality plus minimalistic feel to it. So yeah, so definitely check out her work. The next photographer I'm going to show is Curvy Rui, and his Instagram handle is Project Curvy Rui. Kabir, again, his pictures are very interesting because it's a combination of, I think, documentary plus abstracts. So here, I'm going to just read out what exactly he said. He says, this is an image shot in Nepal after the earthquake. And this is dust settled on a pond. So again, on the face of it, it's just a beautiful pattern with this color. But again, he's trying to express an emotion, what he felt, aftermath the earthquake. So again, it's like you can express some emotion through photography, and he was, let's say he didn't photograph during the earthquake, it's the aftermath. So how do we capture emotions or an event after it's over? So yeah, this is one way of doing it. So again, this is a very beautiful pattern of curves. Again, very monochromatic feel. And Kavi Rai's images, most of them are very muted colors. So that's quite interesting the way he uses colors. And he says, my mother's little garden, where even the drying leaves have so much to share if you're ready to listen. So again, it's really a poetic image, and he's trying to capture something very poetic about what he feels about his mother's garden. Okay, this is hard to guess, but he says, my sister's just a month before she delivered. Life goes through with so many changes, and nobody said no to any of the compromises. So yeah, it's a very beautiful, striking patterns. Again, very muted, almost monochromatic. This is late night walks contemplating about being elsewhere. This is shot in Aarhus, Denmark. This is not a straightforward image of what he's trying to say. It's entirely it's an image which is about feeling. So again, very poetic image, and very ambiguous too. It can mean many things. So we'll see how abstract photography allows us to interpret images. The same image, everybody can see and interpret in a very different way from whatever connotations they bring to it. So depending on the perspective, the meaning of the image changes, and there's no fixed meaning to the image. And finally, this is a textured wall of an old shop. So again, the patterns are very interesting. It's very monochromatic, and again, you can it could be like a bird's eye view of some landscape, or like a close-up of peeling paint. So it's quite interesting. Again, it can be interpreted in many ways. Next, I'm going to show pictures by Nilofer Khan, and her handle is nilo.o. Very beautiful work. So here, I'm going to just read out what she says. She says, it's a rainy day, and the air conditioner in the office made some fog in the window, and the traffic across the window, made these really amazing patterns. So again, these are very striking abstract images with a lot of color, and there's also design element to it. So yeah, it's a very beautiful picture. This is another very striking, very graphic image, graphically quite interesting. It says it's a reflection of the window of the tiles of my hall, and she used a diamond earring to give fragmented effect. So it's pretty striking. This, she says, it's a photograph of the school across my home. The glass windows of the small dots of bright paint are shot with a flash. So you have this very diffused, you know, discs, and there's a cross. So it's quite interesting. You can interpret it in many, many ways. But yeah, it's overall very striking black and white image. This is very dynamic image. So she says it's a city skyline that I see from my window. This is shot around dusk using earring, again the same earring, and when you move the earring, it has this very crystal-like images, which is basically glitter. Again, a very, very striking image and a very abstract image also. This is again a very, it's one of my favorite images from a collection. So it's St. Peter's School, St. Peter's Cross, I think. And then again, using the diamond earring, she gave this fragmented look, and also the light scattered all over. And it's also double exposure. So again, it's a very brilliant use of double exposure. Again, it's very evocative of something religious or something very mysterious. So one of the things about abstract photography is evoking something very mysterious. So yeah, it's a very beautiful illustration of an abstract image. So we'll move on to Kenji Chiga, at Chiga. Kenji is a Japanese photographer who lives in Tokyo and makes, he's basically photo book maker, makes huge number of photo books like crazy. So I really like a lot of his works, and a lot of his books are also beautiful. You should definitely check out his work. So I'm going to read out what Kenji says about his work. So this is a not a very typical photograph made with a camera, but I just want to illustrate how by repeated copying of an image, like it could be Xerox, a photocopy, or a color Xerox, or whatever, but something which every time you reproduce the image, it introduces glitches. Now that subtracts the information from the image, and essentially you will end up with a very abstract image. Now this is a very ambiguous image, and it can be interpreted in many, many ways. But Kenji has been working on the idea of suicide. So he's also made a book on it. So he says it's a theme on the repeated suicide, and the magazine was the picture of a tourist visiting a place where suicide was repeated. So that's like, he's essentially expressing a very abstract, idea like suicide. He's not photographing dead bodies or anything like that, but using a very conceptual idea of repeated, reproduction of an image. So that's something which, one can think about. It's a very interesting use of imaging technology. So you can use a photocopy machine or a scanner and use the idea of a glitch, or introduce a glitch to make some very abstract images. Now this is something which he says, after the big earthquake struck in Japan in 2011, he photographed the sky. Again, it's an emotional moment for him, and this captures something of a sense of loss. Again, a very, very muted image, not too many colors in it, and there is a feeling of a loss in this. So yes. So Kenji has been working, like I mentioned, Kenji has been working on a series of images. The TV grab of fans who gathered at a site of suicide of a singer in 1986. So it's a part of a series, and again, you can't really make out what's happening here. But again, there is something very gloomy about this image. It's out of focus. You can see the screen pattern, the television screen pattern. So it does give an indication of that it is a television image, not a straightforward image. But again, it's a very abstract image and conveys what it's trying to, say through a feeling. So it's an image about an emotion rather than any, a direct visual. So yeah, it's something which we cannot express directly, even through words. A photograph can convey sometimes. So this is a very beautiful, again, a very image with a beautiful graphic quality to it, of movement, repetition, urban movement, urbanity, city. As Tokyo is a very, very, pretty hectic place. So yeah, it's this kind of a captures something like, people either rushing to office or just a busy city or a very crowded city. So anyway, it can be interpreted in many, many ways. And then this again, this is another way of creating images which are non-traditional. This is not just shot with a camera, but again, this is a water-soluble paper which has been melted on a glass, and then the original image kind of disintegrates, and you have some really interesting, you know, abstract images which come out of the original image, but the original image is lost. So again, you're trying to convey something which is which is not tangible, which you can only feel. So the closest you can do is to use abstract photography to somehow come close to that feeling. You may probably never get to the actual feeling, but it's a pretty close way of saying what you want to say. Philip is a French photographer based in Mumbai. His handle is Khichri, I think. That's how it's pronounced. Yeah, it's pretty eclectic kind of work. This is shot in the US. Again, a very beautiful graphic patterns in it. Um, Kind of abstract, but it can be interpreted in many, many ways. Very beautiful image. So I'm going to just read the comment in this image. That's the reason why I picked up this image, which, somebody says, your photography reminds me of the opening scene of Goya, just after the opening credits, where one sees the pale white face of the aged artist lying on a white pillow, clothed in white night dress. So many subtle studies of white and pale and gray. So this is Carlos Saura's a Spanish filmmaker. She's talking about Goya by him. Again, this is an image, Philip could have shot whatever. It evokes something which, let's say, I don't know anything about this, the original image. So when the viewer looks at it, it can evoke many, many associations, which is very personal to them. So that's something which is very interesting about abstract photography. So yeah, it's got this very potent associations, which makes it quite interesting. Also at the same time, very challenging. How do you make interesting images from something which is very banal, situations? So things all around us, in a house or road or streets or anywhere, if you can somehow zoom in and come to a point where the image loses its original reference, but becomes something else. So that's one way of approaching abstract photography. Um, so this is peeling paint or a cracked wall or whatever. It could be a drought. It can be many things, but it's a very minimalist image. Again, one of the things which abstract photography uses quite a lot. So yeah, it's a very striking, minimal. It's a conveys something. It could be even a script for all an unknown language. Maybe some UFOs came to Earth and like wrote something. We don't know. It's just an interesting image which can have many, many meanings. Udit is a photographer based in Delhi and Agra with the handle Udit Kulisreshta. Udit has a lot of color in his images, very strong use of color and forms. So it's like an homage to Van Gogh. He uses blur a lot, and then in this there's a lot of mass of red. So if you look at art history, there's a lot of color field painters where they use a large section of the canvas with colors. So not necessarily with any shapes or forms, but it's about a feeling again. So Udit tried to use blur and try to invoke some of Van Gogh's, either Van Gogh's madness or the use of very, very strong colors in his paintings. So the next image is again, he says it's light painting and deliberate camera movement. So this is an homage to Mark Rothko. Rothko was an American abstract expressionist in 40s, 50s, and 60s. He had again a very different approach to paintings in which the whole canvas was covered with large shapes, rectangular shapes, with just colors which were almost ethereal, very sublime use of colors, not necessarily flat, but they had this blurred edges, and you could stare at his paintings for hours, and I believe people spontaneously break into, start crying, standing in front of his painting. They're so emotionally charged. So again, abstract photography allows us to talk to art history, which might not be possible with other forms of photography. But this has that flexibility to enter into many zones and talk to many aspects of art. So and different movements of art. So impressionism is one thing which a lot of photographers use, and abstract expressionism is what Udit is using here. The last photographer I'm using is Satish Kumar from Tamil Nadu. His handle is Satish Kumar Photo. So I'm going to just mention what he is saying. Satish. So this is 2019 December. This was a solar eclipse, and then I believe it's reflection. This is the shadows of the eclipse, and he used again a blur. So Satish has a strong associations with his childhood. Most of his photography has references to his childhood. So he says, I always wonder about cosmic coincidence from childhood. That scene in my home triggered my curiosity. So if you look at his work, you can go to his handle and check out his work. So he has this a kind of nostalgia, to a sense of loss of childhood or people he knew when he was a kid. So again, this is not directly connected with eclipse or anything. It could be nostalgia. So abstract photography can be used for saying things again which are not linear. They can be very non-linear associations. So yeah, so I hope these examples help you guys to think about abstract photography in many different ways. And these are not just, I just give very few examples. Then if you just Google images about abstract photography, you'll see tons of images which are quite interesting, using flash, using various camera techniques, double exposures, zoom lenses, whatever. So try to use references to something which are not obvious. For example, using art historical references, or your memories or emotions. Things like that could be much more interesting than just sticking to just playing with photography. But if you use associations, I think your work becomes much more emotionally dense and much more interesting. You have a lot more to say. So yeah, all the best.